Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, wa salatu wa salam ala Sayyidul Mursaleen, Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. So my dear respected brothers and sisters, attendees, today inshallah we're going to continue with our Maktab training. And as I mentioned in the last session, one of the things that we all look towards as the Muslim Ummah and the community of those people who are interested and also those who are ready and willing to help with the establishment of Deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We should be mindful that one of the core systems that the Ummah has used is the Maktab system and instilling good values, training, education to our young ones growing up. And that had been established in my last session. I mentioned Umar who himself would have done a lot of work, and there would be a stipend given from the Baitul Mal, and there would be a designated teacher. And similarly, education has been part and parcel of our interest as Muslims in societal progress and helping with the betterment of society at large. So we continue with that session now, and today's focus is going to be a little different. Today's focus, first we're starting on the importance of child psychology, because it is important as a parent to understand what stage your child is at. You see, when we miss out that completely, right, we end up missing the bracket, or not understanding where the child is at and what is needed for that child to grasp the information that you want to give them. A lot of times too, even in school, I've heard just recently a mother telling us about her child, and this child is less than 3 years, now going over 2 years, and she was complaining that this child doesn't learn, and the child doesn't want to say his ABCs, and he's not progressing, and she's worried about him and his progress. And I had to kind of stop her a bit and say, your child is a toddler, and I don't know what you expect from your toddler, but he's not going to be singing the ABC for you. So without further ado, I'll invite our guest for this session, Brother Yazid. Yazid has a lot of extensive practice and experience in the education sector. He's been working with quite a few institutes as well, looking at different aspects of their learning, accreditation as well, quality assurance in education, inshallah. So you're in good hands, and I'll invite him to take the stage, inshallah.
So, my name is Yazidi Mamdi, and I've been associated with the Al-Ihsaan Institute for a number of years now. So inshallah, so we have done a lot of workshops in the last few years with different Maktab teachers and different teachers in different institutions as well to enhance the quality of delivery and even in the quality of the institution, allowing or giving ideas for the Islamic institutes to be on par or better than the normal academic or traditional institutes. So inshallah, my presentation will be on child psychology and those elements that ties in with stages of development and child psychology. So as we all know, as teachers, is that human beings develop in different stages. And in the development of different stages, it allows the thought process of individuals at different levels in these different stages of development in life, that people think differently and also people act differently. And in that regard, what happens is that people will also learn differently as we develop. So one of the key things is that we must understand as teachers is the aspect of how people learn, what they need to learn, and where they need to learn, at what time they need to learn as well too. So taking into consideration the development of our child is that we need to pay particular attention to what children need to learn and when they need to learn it. And what governs that is how do we present information to them to make learning enjoyable, to make learning exciting, and to make learning be appreciated by students. one of the barriers in our education system is that we have students who attend normal school, as we say, from 8:30 to 2:30 or 8:30 to 3 p.m. And then they go to the Maktab in the evening, and we have different teachers teaching them. One of the key things there that I have noticed is that Maktab teachers approach in how do we close the gap, develop a bridge of understanding how students learn in their normal school and how we teach them at the maktab. Because what happens is that sometimes we push the child all over the place in terms of not having an aligned compatibility between how the teaching methodology at the school and in our maktab system. And sometimes we see maktab attendance started off with huge numbers. And then as time progressed, we see that numbers started to dwindle and the retention rate starts to decrease. And we want to know why and all these things. So if we analyze situations like these, we may realize that our teaching strategy or our understanding of how we must teach for students at different age group, it must be sort of reflective and compatible with how they normally learn in the primary school or in the secondary school, as the case may be. So to understand that, we want to cover 3 topics today that inshallah will help us to guide our techniques and our strategies in teaching. And by understanding the elements of the psychology of a child, the learning development stages and classroom management, and how we can tie in these 3 attributes together to increase the quality of our maktab system that we have presently. So the first thing we must understand, what is child psychology? And child psychology is basically a scientific study of the developmental changes in infants, children, and adolescents. The entirety of the growth of the child is analyzed from physical growth. So we must understand this, that physical growth and the development of the motor skills to cognitive development to the formations of one's personality and identity. So child psychology looks into several developmental issues, such as the development of the person through stages, the effects of society and environment to the patient's character and personality, and whether children are born with natural mental capabilities. As I say, this is important, the last line here, nature versus nurture. So children, yes, all children are born with abilities. But the key thing is that the role of a teacher, especially a maktab teacher and a Muslim teacher, is that they must be able to differentiate what is naturally natural abilities of our child, and how do we nurture that child through teaching to make them into a competent human being. So in a nutshell, that is basically the strategy that must be employed in maktab. How do we take natural abilities? Because we don't know, in our maktab systems, we don't have differentiation of who are slow learners, who are fast learners, who are who have autism, who have learning disabilities and all these things. So all these things, data, information on all these things needs to be correct. Because how could we teach students without understanding the psychological background of students? So a lot of thought has to go in terms of planning the 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 um the process of how maktabs should classify students, know what decisions to make, how to group our students, as I said, based on different levels of abilities. So normally what happens traditionally, we look at students just based on their age. We do not take into consideration what is their natural standing, meaning that their learning abilities, if they have any imparities, meaning learning disabilities and all these things. And if we do not have these background information, then how could we develop learning plans and our teaching strategy to make it compatible for our students? So it cannot happen. So we cannot be guesstimating on these things. We have to be accurate, and these accurate information information should derive on proper diagnostic testing and evaluation, all these things to make our Maktab training successful. So as I said here, nature versus nurture is an important aspect in going forward, and it's something that should take into consideration at the beginning stage of our Maktabs.
We're having bad weather today, so it's raining a lot, and apparently it affected his line for his internet. So he's trying to resolve it as much as possible, and we will probably come back to that session afterwards, inshallah. So for now, Mufti Ubaidullah has a big session where he will talk a little bit about teaching methodology. He will also talk a little bit about Quran Qaeda teaching as well. And also he wants to touch on the topic of establishing a maktab, which will be an interactive session as well. One of the things that I want you all to take back from this session is that that's everyone's responsibility. We are all responsible for getting and establishing makatib system as much as we can throughout the entire ummah, inshallah. Because it is the foundation of our deen. When our kids, they learn, they nurture with Islam, inshallah, that stays with them, and they will inshallah die with that, and they will become the sadaqah jariyah that passes on, inshallah, for all of us. So keep that in mind, and we want to try to instigate that that importance and that give that support as well wherever we can to help you establish wherever you can establish the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the maktab systems. Without further ado, I would hand you over, but before I do that, actually, Mufti Ubaidullah has been the head of the Maktab and Education Services of the Board of America, is actually right here. And also working in New York, he has helped many makatib be established in America. I worked with him myself, our brother Talha was in the last session, he worked with him as well. And we've always had a excellent experience with Mufti Ubaidullah, with the energy and the support that he would give all of us. And he has, with that sincerity, alhamdulillah, made a very big impact and established many maktabs in America and outside of America as well. So he has a really good insight of it, and I'll hand you over, inshallah, to him, and hope that we can benefit as much as possible. So Mufti Ubaidullah, over to you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I will start with the holistic, and then we'll move on to teaching, inshallah. So respected brothers and sisters and ulama ikram. So the first thing that we have to realize is when we talk about a maktab program is not a Saturday or Sunday class. A maktab program from the very beginning of history, even before Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came, even from the previous Anbiya, when we talked about a maktab program, the maktab program was always 5 days a week or maybe 6 days a week. It was never a Saturday and a Sunday. And I'm going to prove that point with just 2 stories. One story before the coming of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and one story after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came. So in the Quran, we find Surah Buruj and the tafsir of Surah Buruj, where it is mentioned about the story of the boy who was chosen by the king to learn black magic. And then, to cut the long story short, when he would go to study, he would stop by the scholar and study ilm, and study knowledge. Then he would go to school. On his way back home from school, he would again stop by the scholar, and he would study the divine revelation of that time. This continued for a while until we know the story. And one day, what happened was there was a wild animal standing in the middle of the road. And then he picked up a stone and he said, "Oh Allah, if what my teacher who was teaching me the divine revelation, if he is correct and true, then allow the stone to kill the animal." And the animal died. Then he was convinced and yaqeen that my teacher who is teaching me the divine revelation is correct. From that point onward, Allah Ta'ala used him to cure many, many people. And every person that Allah Ta'ala used him as a means of curing, he would tell them that I don't have any magic through which I can cure you. I believe in Allah, and Allah Ta'ala can cure you, but you have to also believe in him. So any patient that came to him, he would cure them by making them accept Islam and then making dua to Allah to cure them. Then we know the story of how the blind minister was cured. And then when he came to the king said that, "Who cured you?" He said that my Allah cured me. So the king became very upset that you have another God besides me. Na'udhu billah. at that point, the king tortured the minister, found the boy, tortured the boy, found the teacher, killed the teacher and the minister, and wanted to kill the boy. But he wanted to kill the boy in an exemplary fashion so that the entire city would still consider him to be God. Na'udhu billah. So we know the story of him going to the mountain, and then he made dua, everyone fell off the mountain, he came back in the middle of the ocean, and then all the soldiers fell off after he made dua, he came back. But the short story is, at the end, he told the king that this is how you have to kill me, is you have to tie me and then call the entire city there and take a bow, an arrow from my quiver and shoot me. And while you're shooting me, you have to say that I shoot this boy or I kill this boy in the name of the God and the Lord of this boy. So as soon as they shot him, he died. But because the entire city had seen that the king who called himself the God was a fake, and the one who was a real God was the God of this boy, everyone else accepted Islam, and then they dug ditches and then they threw everyone inside and they burned it, which is why we call Surah Buruj the story of the ditch. The objective of saying the story was, this is a long time before Rasulullah came into this world, but this boy who was chosen to learn the darkest of magic, we know anyone who practices black magic goes straight into Jahannam. It takes a person out of the folds of Islam. This boy was chosen to learn and study black magic. However, because of his participation in learning the divine revelation morning and evening, it was sufficient not only to save his iman, but the iman of the entire city. So this shows that even when our children are going to school 5 days a week, if we can find a means of bringing them into our after-school Maktab program 5 days a week, or at least 4 days a week, we can hope through the fadl and the grace of Allah Ta'ala that this Maktab, if we can deliver it properly, structure the program properly, will become a means of saving the generation, inshallah, or maybe much more benefit will come from this boy and this girl who is studying, and he might become a means of his community, his school, and other things coming into Islam. Then let's go to the story of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We know in his time the education structure was not very organized, and it was mostly adults, because the children were just born and growing up in the Muslim community. Most of them were adults, so the focus was more on adult education, which is why, we will not go into much of the history, but the khulasa is, in his time it was more of an unorganized fashion, where people would come to the masjid whenever they felt the need, and then there would always be a halaqah in the masjid to teach them the necessary knowledge of Islam and education. However, in the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, he had brought system and structure into the different administration of the Muslim Ummah. He brought a structure into the education system, into the roads and highway system, into the other systems of the community. And in his time, he had made it a mandate that every single child in Medina and whichever Muslim states in the main capitals would have to gather under a teacher who was appointed by the Khalifa, and the Muslim government was responsible for paying the salary of that teacher, and that teacher would have to teach them all the subjects of Islam, including literature, Arabic, etc. And it comes, even guidelines comes that for the smarter students, you would command the teachers that teach them orally. That means make them memorize orally. But if a student is weak in memory, then make them write and then memorize. So that guideline was also given. And also to show etiquette and respect, at the end of the day, they would write in a slate. So they would wash off all the ink from the slate and they would cover it with the dust. So this was the structure of education in the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, which timing was Saturday to Wednesday, Thursday and Friday was given off. And the timing was from after Fajr till before Dhuhr time came in, and after Dhuhr all the way till Asr time. Okay, now the biggest hurdle or a problem that we face when we tell Muslim parents that I need your son and your daughter to come and study with me 5 days a week, they will say that, brother, he has homework. So this is a survey not done by the Muslims. This was done by the PO survey. This was done in, I think, 2014 or 15, before the COVID. Remember, this has changed a lot since the COVID. Since the COVID, more and more time children are spending on electronics. So anything I'm showing here is outdated. It's much worse now. Based on the 2014-15 survey, they show that approximately 4 or 5 hours of time is spent per child in America on leisure activities. In South America, I would say the time would be similar. It would not be really much of a difference. So, and from that 5 hours, about 3 hour time goes behind watching television. Nowadays, they don't really have to watch television. They have so many other things to watch. They have videos now, they have TikTok, they have Instagram, they have Facebook is outdated. Twitter is also outdated almost, but it's still there. So they have so many new apps. Every 3 months, something is changing. A new app is coming and the youngsters are jumping into the new app. So what I'm trying to say is we tell the parents that, listen, we are trying to save your child from 3 hours of destruction every day. Instead of allowing your son to watch cartoons, videos, movies, violence, unethical things which will destroy his character, which will destroy his emotion, everything, his sensitivity, we would rather have him come to the masjid or wherever our classroom is and study Quran, study Islamic studies, we don't say 3 hours, we say 2 hours a day. So this logically is a logical answer for parents who complain that we cannot send our kids to Maktab because of we don't have time and there's too much homework. Okay, that's another point to keep in mind. The third point I would say is something which is extremely dangerous. I feel that our brothers and sisters in South America have faced this more often, where we see in one family you have one person who is a Muslim, one person who is a Buddhist, one person who is a Hindu, one person who is a Christian. So the situation is very, very delicate. We have no idea what percentage of our ummah we're losing into non-Islam, and what a fine line many of our Muslim communities are walking on. And we, whom Allah Ta'ala has given the little bit of understanding on the importance of how important Islam is for these people and how only Islam can save them from eternal destruction, that how much responsibility we have. In America, the issue is like this, that we have Muslim families migrating. Every day, new families are coming in, especially nowadays with the refugees. They're coming from Syria, they're coming from Afghanistan, they're coming daily. As soon as these families come, the churches take them over. They feed them, they clothe them, they give them Bible lessons, to the extent that these people in heart they're Muslims, but outwardly, in order to have their standard of living intact, they do not say it out loud and they would join the Bible classes. Besides that, within the last 40 years, we have seen that the Muslims who migrated to this country, from their children, 1 out of 4 children have already left the folds of Islam. That means 25% of Muslim youth who were born and raised in Muslim families, the first generation, that means the father, mother was Muslim and the children are growing up in the school and college environment. We're talking about them. 25% of them say they no longer affiliate themselves with Islam. That is one problem. The other problem is from the remaining 75%, 50%, they have doubts about many aspects of Sharia. They doubt the laws of inheritance. They doubt the fact of a man, how many times he can marry. They doubt the rules and regulations of the hudud and the capital punishments and many other aspects of Sharia. And they say that Islam is good, but these areas of Islam, we simply, na'udhu billah, cannot accept. So, and we know based on our knowledge of Aqidah that when a person has doubts and questions about the major and important major areas of Islam, which are clear-cut nusus, then that person also leaves the folds of Islam. So 25% we have lost clearly to atheism, and the remaining 50% we have either lost them or they're on the verge of losing. So 75% system loss we are seeing within the 30-40 years of Muslims in America, which is extremely dangerous. Now, the question is that what do we do to reverse this trend of our children not gaining the fundamental foundations of Islam and going off track? The only logical method that we have found to be useful is the Maktab program, because the children join the Maktab program at the age of 5 and 6. That is the time when we can shape their minds into believing in Allah, trusting Allah, understanding who Rasulullah is, loving Rasulullah and the basic fundamental aspects of Islam and the wisdom behind those rulings. Once we can do that and we can keep them with us all the way till high school, inshallah, that child will never lose Islam and he will never give up Islam. Now, I want to talk about a very recent history. I'm not going to go back 1400 years. I want to cover only the topic of the last 60 years. I'm going to mention 2 examples. An example of South America versus South Africa. Remember, these two both are south parts of 2 different continents. In the late 1800s, or in the beginning of the 1900s, or we can say maybe in the middle of the 1800s, Muslims, there were 2 major migrations. One migration was from the Ottoman Empire, which was all the way covering the Arabian Peninsula as well. A large migration happened from there to South America. I'm talking about Chile, Peru, and the other areas of South America. And at the same time, around the same time, when the British Empire was becoming weak in India, many Muslims migrated from India, specifically the area called Gujarat, and they migrated and moved to South Africa. Now, if we look at the first generation of Muslims who moved to each of these countries, we will see that the Muslims who moved to South America, they built beautiful and massive masjids. In the same way, those Muslims who moved and migrated to South Africa, they also built their masjids. But the difference between the masjid of the South American Muslims versus the masjids of the South African Muslims was, the Muslims in South America, they just built the masjid for Salah. They had no interest in the education of their children and their future. Their understanding was, we are Muslims, so our children will naturally become Muslims. However, the Muslims who migrated to South Africa, their first concern after building the masjid was, there is no environment of Islam in this land. If we want our children to survive on Islam, we have to teach them. So the first thing they did was they wrote letters to India to ask them to send they used to call them the Miyaji and the Appas. They told them to bring the Miyaji and the Appas to this land so that they can teach our children Qaida and Quran. Now, in those stages, in those times, there was not really a very structured curriculum. Maybe the only thing they had was the Qaida, the Quran, and maybe the Ta'lim al-Islam or Ta'lim al-Haq. It was mainly the Ta'lim al-Islam in those days, and later on Ta'lim al-Haq came into place. That was the only curriculum they had. But because of the consistency of coming to the Maktab program before going to school and after returning from school every day, the result is within a 90 to 100 years time, we can see that the masjids in South Africa have grown so much that there are maybe over a few hundred masjids in South Africa, where each masjid has maybe 100 to 500 to even 1,200 students studying in the Maktab program daily. And each masjid has so many hufaz, mashallah, that when it comes to Taraweeh, you will rarely find a masjid which can allow more than 2 rakats per hafiz. There are so many hufaz in South Africa. However, because there was no Maktab system and education in South America, we can see that maybe 90% of the masjids that were built in those times, they have either been changed into museums, or they have become ballrooms, or they have become restaurants and something else. So we can see from here that if the masjid was the objective, then we would see that it doesn't take 50 to 100 years before the masjid, just like we build the masjid, it goes to someone else, which is happening to the churches today. 100, 150 years ago, the amount of churches there were, now because they have so little congregants, they don't have enough donation to run those places, so they are selling them to the Muslims, and the Muslims are buying and changing them into masjids. So it doesn't take 50 to 100 years before the masjids which were built by the older generation becomes lost if there is no education for the younger generation in these masjids. But when we have the education, then it is not only that the masjid survives, but the masjid keeps on growing and building and growing until more and more communities have this masjid, and Islam starts spreading through the children to the families until the whole community grows up and develops stronger and stronger in Islam. That is basically one history, a very simple, very mukhtasar and summary of another history that took place was in UK versus the rest of Europe. Muslim population, UK has 4 million, Germany has 10 million. Masjids, UK has maybe 3,000, 4,000, Germany has probably 5,000, 6,000. The results, UK has maybe 1,000 scholars in one city, maybe the city of Birmingham or Batley. Each of these small cities have over 1,000 scholars, not just Hufaz. If we look at Hufaz, we might look at 5 to 10,000 Hufaz in each of these communities. Whereas if you look at Europe, I'm talking about Germany, then in the entire Germany, it will be very hard to find 50 Hufaz of Quran. Why is this such a big contrast between Europe, which has 50% of the Muslim population, UK, which has 50% of the Muslim population of Germany, yet there are maybe 20, 30, 50,000 Hufaz there, whereas in Germany, where you have almost double or more than double the Muslims and almost double the masjids, but you only have 50 Hufaz. The result is one place, the masjid was built without the foundation of Islamic education, whereas in UK, the masjids which were built from 1960 onwards were built on the foundation that the masjid has to have programs 5 days a week for the community's children. So within a 60-year time, from 1960 to 2021, we can see the stark difference in the growth of Islam in these two respective communities. So my brothers and sisters, the first thing we have to do at this point is let's make a firm intention. If we are an admin of a masjid, then no matter how hard it is, we will develop the Maktab program in the masjid. If we are not affiliated with the masjid and we only have our communities or our home, let's make a firm intention that even if it be in my living room, even if it be in my basement, even if it be in my neighbor's house, I will establish something, a program 5 days a week, 4 days a week for the children of the community. If we make this intention, inshallah, whatever we're discussing here will have fruit and will bear, and we will see the results even before we die. But if we just listen and we say, mashallah, it was a good presentation, then at the end, we will not see results in the community. And 20 years down the line, the condition will be worse than what we are looking at today. Now, next point I want to go through is up to this point, if anyone has any questions, they may put it on the chat. Mufti Saab will inshallah note them down and we will answer them as we go through. Now I'm starting with the basic Maktab standards. In basic Maktab standards, number one, for a Maktab program to succeed, we need two things. We need parents, we need students, we need teachers, and we need management. If four parts of the community, four segments of the community are on board with any Maktab program, inshallah, that Maktab program has to flourish. It cannot fail. If any of these four are not on the same page, then we will see weakness in that Maktab program. So as we say, the first thing is the teacher who's teaching has to be very passionate about teaching, not someone who's teaching based on the hour that they're being paid. Unfortunately, that type of mentality will not get us results in terms of seeing the next generation grow and flourish. So the teachers have to be passionate about teaching. Number two, there has to be a structure in the curriculum. We cannot just say that anyone who comes, just study whatever you want to study. Rather, every single child and parent who comes to us, they need to know that when the child is enrolled into this program, in the first year of his program, he is going to learn, or she is going to learn so much Quran reading. They're going to memorize so many surahs. They're going to memorize so many du'as. They're going to, from Islamic studies, in fiqh, they will learn so much. In hadith, they will learn so much. In akhlaq, they will learn so much. Adab. So in these ways, there has to be a structured curriculum. So so we say that the curriculum is divided into four areas. One area is the Quran reading, which is from the basic qa'idah until the fluency in reading the Quran by looking. The second part of the curriculum is the memorization aspect. In memorization, we have the surah memorizations, which has that with the translation, if possible. Then we have the masnoon du'as, those du'as which a child needs in his day-to-day life, and hadith. From the hadith, I'll show the curriculum, inshallah. So the memorization is one area of the curriculum. The third area of the curriculum is Islamic studies, which we will explain has 7 subjects. Then the fourth area, which is something which covers the rest of the 3 areas, is the tarbiyah, and how to teach with tarbiyah in mind, so that the Quran we're teaching is not being wasted. The surah and the hadith and dua we're making them memorize is coming into practice, and the Islamic studies we're teaching them is also coming into practice. So tarbiyah is the approach of how we teach all these subjects. And then on top of that, having safe and comfortable classrooms. Why is this important? Remember, we are not teaching adults, we are teaching children, right? Mostly children. And if adults come, alhamdulillah, we should teach them as well, because they're coming with talab and they're coming with the desire to learn. But we are focusing on children. Now children, they go to school. If they come into the maktab and then they see the maktab is dirty, the seating arrangement is not good, it is very uncomfortable, there is not enough light and enough, it looks very dim and dull. What will happen is psychologically the child will say, it seems that my school is of a higher standard than my maktab. So he will mentally start considering the school education to be higher, and he will start considering the maktab education to be lower. So we always say, this is a very fundamental principle, that whenever we create the environment for the maktab environment in terms of status should not be too different to the way or the standards of the school. Next question is, how do we group the students? So in terms of grouping the students, we can basically do one of 3 techniques. We can either group them based on their age. So we have one class, similar ages, 5 to 7. We have one class, 8 to 10. We have one class, 11 to 13. So one is just grouping them according to ages and then just teaching them. One way is that grouping the students according to their Quran level. that if whoever is on Qaida, just put them together. Whoever is on Juz Amma, just group them together. Whoever is reading the Quran fluently, put them together. And one is what we call the hybrid approach, which is the most productive. That is, we divide the class into two. We say that we have Quran, for example, for 1 hour, and then we have Islamic studies and Tarbiyah for 1 hour. So we say that when it comes to the first hour, which is Quran, we group the students according to their Quran level. Then when we have the second hour, when they have the Islamic studies and Tarbiyah, at that aspect, we say group the students according to their age. What is the benefit of this methodology of grouping? The benefit is when it comes to Quran teaching, if the teacher is experienced, he or she will focus a good amount of time collectively teaching the tajweed to the students and application, because the tajweed, the rules and application can be done collectively through mashq. If they're in Qaida, the Qaida revisions can be done collectively. So the first part would be individual lessons. Then the second part would be collectively teaching them something so that they learn to apply the rules of tajweed. If the groups are in Quran according to the levels, then it becomes easier, as technically everyone is on Qaida or everyone is on Juz Amma. And then when it comes to Islamic studies, that we know that based on age, a person's psychology is different. So a person between 5 to 7 will have a similar type of psychology. The best way to prove my point is if you have a children festivity or children function, and you let all the children into one room or one big hall, you will see within a short time the children who are of similar age, they get together and they start playing with each other. And then we will see the students who are children who are a little bit older age, they're slowly they're getting together and they're playing with each other. Why? Because psychologically there is a match between children of similar age. Because of this, we say that in Islamic studies, it is most appropriate or preferred that we try to teach the Islamic studies according to their age, as their learning and comprehension capacity is of the same level. Now, that is grouping. The next point is calendar. Why is calendar important? Because you will see any school that we go into, the school from the beginning of the year will say, this is the calendar, this is the first term, this is the second term, this is the third term, these are the exam days, this is the orientation day, these are the parent-teachers conference day, and this is the graduation day. Any school we go to which has any standard will, like a good, decent standard, will give us this calendar when we enter into the school. Why do they give the calendar? They are telling you that, listen, you're a parent. If you want your child not to miss any class, make sure you don't take any vacation, or make sure you don't make a doctor's appointment during our school time. That is the message they're giving us. In the Maktab, if we don't have a calendar, we are giving the parents free rein to bring them whenever they want, to pull them away for vacation whenever they want, to make their doctor's appointment in the Maktab time, to go for swimming lessons in the Maktab time, to go for karate lessons in the Maktab time. We're allowing the parents to do that. It will not seem professional. We have to have a calendar, and the calendar should be similar to the school calendar of whichever community we're going. So whenever the school has vacation, we have vacation. If the parents want to go on holiday, let them go on a holiday during the school vacation and be itminan and be, have ease of mind that we are not missing any Maktab lessons too. Next, examinations. Even Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in his life, he had an examination system. It comes in multiple places in the history that there were times when the Muslims would come to Medina to learn deen. He would distribute the male and the female among the community. So he would send the males to a few Sahabis' homes, and he would send the females to a few Sahabiyas' homes. And then he would let them study for 1 or 2 weeks. After 1 or 2 weeks, he would call them and he would ask them questions to gauge their level of understanding of Islam and fiqh. If he was satisfied with them, he would tell them that now you are ready to go home, go home. And if he was not satisfied, it comes in history, we have seen that he would change the teachers and give these same students to another few homes of Sahabi who had the ilm, and they would be responsible for teaching. So the structure of examining is something which is proven from the seerah. Schools, remember, when we make a standard, we look at how the school, because we can see in this world for the last 100 years or so, the school system is something which the whole country and the people are craving towards. So whenever we look at the school, we see that they have some structure and they have some standards, which is the thing which is attracting the community. the schools have 3 terms in place. I don't know in Trinidad how it works, but in America, average, we have 3 terms. And same way we say a maktab should have 3 exam terms. It should not be an exact same week as the school, because the children will have double pressure. It can be 1 week before or 1 week after the imtihan and the exams of the school, but there should be 3 terms. In terms of revision, we actually have a different strategy. In terms of revision, when I show the timetable, I'll explain. I'm just saying it briefly now. We ask the teachers to do a quick oral revision at the end of every week, followed by the practicals: practical salah, practical wudu, practical tayammum, practical janazah, practical Eid, practical Jum'ah, and practical a'mal. Then we ask the teachers at the end of every month, the 4th week of every month, to do a revision and a recap of everything which was covered between the 1st to 3rd week. Then we say that before, because our 3 terms in a year, when we take out the summer, based on the school calendar, so we say 2 weeks before every term exam, we first send a newsletter to the parents explaining how much material was covered and exactly how the parents can help in making the child improve so that they get a better result in the exams. And then the teacher stops new lessons, and for the 2 weeks entirely, they will focus on everything that was covered from the beginning of that term until the end, and a revision is done before the term exam. So this is the 3 steps that we take in terms of preparing the students in a way that they don't forget what was done previously and they do well in the exams. Then we say that a basic maktab should have a fee structure. The question is, what should be the fee structure? We say that a fee structure means a maktab should be self-funded. We should not have a system which is based and will only function if people are donating, and if people stop donating, the maktab will fail. We should never have a system is not built like that. A system is always built that it will function and sustain on its own. So we say that the minimum number of students in a class should be 10 and the maximum should be 14, 15. So we say since the minimum is 10, of course, if we don't start off with 10, that's fine. But I'm saying that we should try to keep it, at least 10. Then that creates a good atmosphere of competition among the students, and it makes it easier for the teacher. We say that within the 10 students fee should be enough to cover the expenses of the teacher. So for example, if a teacher is getting paid $500, for example, or I don't know the fee structure there, then every child should be giving $50, for example. So now the question remains on what about students who cannot afford? We have a universal system in the world, mashallah. For masjids, we collect funds from the community. For iftar, we get sponsorship from the community. And mashallah, the sponsors themselves are very happy that my money is going towards feeding the fasting people and I'm getting the reward. Same way, there is nothing more rewarding than a servant of Allah learning the Quran and Deen. So can we imagine how many Muslims are sitting down and waiting for the opportunity to spend some money to sponsor a child who is studying the Quran and Deen? So when we have parents who cannot afford, we can always look for sponsors. But the fee structure has to be of that level that will sustain the salary of the teacher within 10 students. Then the basic, we should have attendance, and we should have attendance, behavior, and uniform tracking. There should be at least 1 teacher workshop a year and a maximum of 15 students per class. I'm going to skip through the intermediate and advanced standards. I'm going to straight into the curriculum. Quran. What is the objective of Quran? The objective of Quran is so that our Muslim children and Muslims can learn to recite the Quran fluently and beautifully, while being able to apply the rules of tajweed, basically to be able to recite the Quran in the way it was revealed to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is basically a few things. Number 1 is when we make a curriculum, the curriculum should be designed in a way that we can hold a student in the Maktab program for 8 years. Remember, if the Maktab program becomes successful, by the 3rd year, many of the students' parents will want their children to become a Hafil. Any Maktab in the world where there was structure, it took about 3 years' time. Within 3 years' time, the Maktab progressed to the extent that a large number of students from Maktab, they went on to become a Hafid of Quran, and they were able to do it. So that is, we will have students like that, but the bulk majority of the students will be only in the Maktab program. So we should make it in a way that they stay in the program as long as it takes us to complete their Islamic studies curriculum, which is basically 8th grades. So we say that the first year we should focus on finishing the qaida. The second year we should focus on finishing the juz amma while applying every single rule of tajweed in the juz amma. How do we do that? They begin by spelling out the juz amma, and then they start reading without spelling. Then every single tajweed rule, ikhfa, idgham, idhar, iqlab, idgham shafawi, izhar shafawi, and ikhfa. So like this, the different rules, we make a small initial, and while after they complete their daily lesson, we make them write the initials of the tajweed rule under the rule in that Quran page. So what happens is they memorize the rule, they apply the rule in their lesson when they're giving it to us, and then they write down the initials under the tajweed rule, so the applications remain strong in their minds. Like this, the juz amma needs to be completed. So by the time juz amma is complete, they have had so much exercises that they no longer have any doubts on the concept of tajweed or how it's applied. Then from that point onwards, we can focus on anywhere between 2 to 5 juz a year, depending on the speed of the child. They can complete that every year. And we focus on building fluency at that time and improving their quality of recitation. There are 2 resources here which the brothers and sisters can take benefit from. One is this here. It is called the tanzil.net. The tanzil.net is basically, let me just click on this. Okay, let me just open it in a different page. So the tanzil.net is basically an app where we can choose any surah of the Quran. We can choose from multiple qurra. So we usually recommend Sheikh al-Minshawi or Sheikh al-Husari, because both of their Quran is basically on the standard of tajweed that we would like to see in the students. So here the benefit is they can click on any verse and they can press the play button. And as many times as they click on the verse, that's the amount of time the Qari will recite that verse. So what happens is, specifically for the children who are already reading the Quran, whichever surah is their new lesson, we can recommend them at home, if they have the resources and the parents are watching over them, that they can practice this at home, not in the madrasa. And also we have to make sure that we first understand what is the environment at home. If the environment at home is they don't have any electronics, then please don't recommend this. This is only for those community families which they would rather spend their time on television, etc., and everyone has electronics. In those cases, we recommend using this. This is for the factor so that they can learn to read those verses of their lesson in the same way Sheikh Minshawi is reciting. So when they come to give the lesson the next day to the teacher, their quality will be much better than if they had not practiced with Sheikh Minshawi. And the second is, as we can see, the second is here, is what we call the islamiyahstudies.uk Ahsan Qawaid. This is the page it will take us to. The entire qaida here is an audio version. If you click here, select the page, you can choose from any page of qaida. So for example, let's start with the letters. Obviously, in the letters we have from alif to ya. So if you click on any of these alphabets, the qari will recite it in a proper tajweed. So if a mother or a father's tajweed is not very good, and we do want them to help their children practice at home for 20 minutes, for example, then instead of allowing them to teach based on their tajweed experience, it is better to give them this link, maybe through WhatsApp or text message, and tell them that this page is the fourth page, as you can see, of the qaida. Just do the first line or the second line, third line 5 times, for example. That way, as they are working with their children, Allah Ta'ala wants their own tajweed will improve. As you can see, the red letters, it indicates the full mouth letters, okay? The red letters, it indicates the full mouth letters. So these are 2 resources which will come in handy for the teacher of Quran. So we are done with the Quran curriculum now, okay? Moving on to this part. This is what we call the pattern table. Why do we call this a pattern table? Anyone here who has taught qaida for a number of years, they will realize that the qaida technically has these 16 patterns. And if any child or Muslim of the Ummah, they gain control over these 16 patterns of qaida, they will never make a lahn jali. Lahn jali means such a major mistake which will distort the meaning of the Quran. So as you can see, green means basically fast, okay? So fatha, kasra, dhamma, these are fast, right? Fast. 2 fatha, 2 kasra, 2 dhamma, an, in, un, these are also fast. Then we have the yellow. Yellow obviously means that you have to slow down. So we have the 6 types of mad. One is the stretching alif. So we have the empty alif before the fatha. So it becomes ah. Then we have the standing fatha. Then we have the stretching ya, basically a ya sakin preceded by a kasra. We have e. Then we have a standing kasra. Then we have a stretching waw, which is a waw sakin preceded by a dhamma. So it becomes oo. And then we have the standing dhamma. So this is the 6 patterns of the madda asli. Then we have the lean. We have the aw and the ay. Then we have the sukun ab at ath aj, and we have the tajdeed ab at ath ajja. So as we can see, if we are able to successfully teach any student of qaida these 16 patterns without forgetting the previous ones, then they will never make a lahn jali mistake in the Quran. Okay, now second part of the curriculum, memorization. In memorization, we have to understand that there is an age factor. If a child enters into the Maktab program at the age of 5, then between 5 to 6, the child is technically in kindergarten. In kindergarten, we cannot give them too much load. So we will give them enough load which they can take comfortably. So as we can see, between the memorization, between the age of 5 to 6, they only are required to memorize these 4 surahs. Surah Fatiha, Nas, Falaq, and Ikhlas. Surah Fatiha, Nas, Falaq, and Ikhlas. Okay, the next is, yes, inshallah, we'll try to finish in 10 minutes, inshallah. Then from grade 1 to grade 8, they have memorization of surah. They will have du'as as well as Islamic studies. But between 5 to 6, they only have memorization of surahs and du'as here. So as we can see, from the first kalima all the way till about 31 du'as. So the 5 to 6-year-olds, their only curriculum is the entire qaida, or at least majority 80% of qaida, memorization of only 4 surahs, and memorization of 31 du'as. That's it. They don't have any Islamic studies. And these du'as are very simple. Dua before starting anything, after completing something, etc., etc. Then the hadith from grade 1 to grade 5, they are here in this curriculum of An-Nasiha. They have about 40 ahadith. As we can see, connected with the real life, feeding the hungry, using the right hand, thanking others, beauty of a person's Islam. So we expect the students to memorize these 40 hadith so they can fall under the virtue of the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam hadith of those ummah who has memorized the 40 hadith. And then from grade 6 to grade 8, they have a hadith, 15 hadith each year, but those are more for understanding. So they will just memorize the Arabic and the meaning and the explanation and how to apply in their lives. It will be basically understanding, explanation. This is a very brief guideline on how to teach subjects which are taught orally. For example, the Quran, Qaida Quran, the memorization of surah and du'as. The objectives are written here. And the method of teaching is for Quran, for example, or for Qaida, we start with making them recognize the single letters. Then they recognize the joint letters. And the structure of teaching is we never teach only like a alif to ya. We don't teach alif to ya. We teach like this. I'm just explaining here. So we'll teach them alif one day, for example. Then we say, first lesson is A'udhu billahi minash shaytanir rajim and Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So we teach like this. The first day we'll start by saying A'udhu billahi minash shaytanir rajim. So we'll teach this a few times. Obviously, they will not be able to memorize it together. It's very big. Then we will break it down. We will say A'udhu billah minash shaytan ar-rajim. A'udhu billah, or actually A'udhu billah. Then we have minash shaytan. A'udhu billahi minash shaytan ar-rajim. Then together, A'udhu billahi minash shaytanir rajim. And remember, when we teach them, please do not teach them A'udhu billahi minash shaytanir rajim, A'udhu billahi minash shaytanir rajim. No. Teach them with tartil from the very beginning. In the Maktab, we are not making them a hafiz of Quran. The Maktab, we are only targeting 4 or 5 surahs a year. So the time we allocate for making them memorize, we should allocate that in such a way that whichever few surahs we make them memorize in the Maktab, it should be done with tartil. So then we have ba, ta, tha, teach them together as a similar letter. then we should not just teach them alif ba ta tha. We should go backwards, say tha ta ba, tha ta ba, sometimes ta tha ba, sometimes ta ba tha. So they don't memorize the sequence, rather they memorize each one individually. Going back, so that is basically always teach with tajweed and makhraj in mind. But the rules they will learn when they reach the rules, but they will be able to orally say it with the tajweed because that's how we taught them, and with tartil. When it comes to the memorization of surah, as I explained, one word at a time, then add the next word, then do the two words together, add a third word and do the two together. Are we in a rush? Absolutely not. If they learn A'udhu Billah in 1 month, Alhamdulillah, we're happy. If they learn Bismillah in a whole month, but they learn it perfectly, we're happy. So there is no rush, but if whatever we do has to be done with quality. Islamic curriculum. This is fiqh from the beginning, fundamentals of Salah, wudu, all the way till in 8th grade. They talk about talaq, iddah, gambling, riba, and all these other things. In Sirah, childhood of Rasulullah until the Shama'il and the life of Abu Bakr, Umar, and Uthman and Ali radiallahu anhum. In the Tariq, they start with Adam alayhi salam and they end with Ayub alayhi salam, but they also study the basics of the Banu Umayyah, the Banu Abbas, and the Muslims in Spain, the Crusaders, and the Ottoman Empire. In Aqaid, from the articles of faith to the signs of Qiyamah, beliefs regarding the Sahaba and Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and all the way until they go to the Sifat of Allah, Istiwa al-Arsh, and consulting with scholars in the day-to-day lives. In Akhlaq, they will learn about 5 to 6 akhlaq per year. As we can see in grade 6, they go to envy, ghiba, pride. And because they have 2 books for the grade 6, because one group focuses for the girls, focusing on their hayd and nifas masail and their maturity, and separately for the boys also. In the adab, about 5, 6 etiquettes of eating, drinking, sleeping, waking up, talking, interacting, talking with an elder, using the phone, and many other things, even nikah, etc. What is the method of teaching the subjects, which are basically, we call it the written subjects, from all the way from aqidah and fiqh till the tariq and the adab and akhlaq? If they're very young, we explain and simplify the lesson to them as much as possible. And then we ask them questions to see how much they retained and how much they understood. And sometimes we ask technical questions. Never underestimate the intelligence of a child. Allah Ta'ala has made children amazing. When you start teaching them and asking them questions, you will see what comes out, and you yourself will be amazed. And at the end of the day, no matter how many teaching techniques we talk about, at the end of the day, it is the relationship between the teacher and Allah that will make him or her better or less better. The more a teacher cries to Allah and begs for help, the more Allah Ta'ala will help her and help him, and give them more ideas on how to best approach their children. Number 2 is, if the children are a little bit older and they can read on their own, always make the children read first. Give them 5 minutes, make everyone read out loud. Once, twice, 3 times. Once they have read, ask them if they understood. If they haven't, we can make them into small groups and tell them to ask each other questions on the same topic. Then again, ask them questions until we are convinced that they learned the right message. If we see that even after numerous trying, they still haven't, that's when we give our explanation and say, this is the correct explanation. This will ensure that 100% of the children, they actually read what's inside the book, and the discussion will make sure that they have comprehended. We'll end off with this session, inshallah, which is the tarbiyah, aspect of tarbiyah. In tarbiyah, number 1, as I said, the last day of the week, Thursday or Friday, after we do the revision of the whole weeks in Islamic studies, we will either do a tahara, wudu session with all the students practically, or we will do a salah. So maybe we'll start with how to stand in salah. One day we will talk about how to raise the hands. One day we'll talk about how to fold the hands. So in a year which has about 36 weeks in calendar, and 2 weeks in each term is for exam prep. So in 30 weeks, 15 weeks should be given for wudu practice, 15 weeks should be given for salah practice. Then we should always end off our lesson with some discussion of Fadail Amal. So this link here can be used to download the Fadail Amal, which is a child-friendly version, so that the children, they feel motivated in doing, in learning deen, and they don't just consider Islam to be something which is all about halal and haram. They should feel motivated and encouraged that, okay, if I'm doing Islam, I'm getting so much in return. Then sunnah habits in adab, we have to instill them by asking them questions of how they did it and where they did it. Same with masnoon dua. After they memorize it, where they apply and how they apply. We can even make them write it down and stick it onto their homes. Good character, once we teach a lesson, then we have to figure out how to make them apply. We can tell them to apply this with their fathers, with their grandfathers, grandmothers, someone, and say this akhlaq, you have to apply it somewhere and come back and explain to us how you did it. Daily adhkar, this is specifically when we have the maktab in the masjid, we should make the students stand up after any salah where the people of the community are there, and they should say out loud, Allahumma anta salam, wa minka salam, and everyone repeats with them, and then say Subhanallah 33 times, Alhamdulillah 33 times, Allahu Akbar 33 times, 34 times. Then they can say the Ayatul Kursi, etc. Practicing khidmah is something that we would like to train our students from the maktab, so they can start with, helping their classmates, helping clean the classroom, helping put all the desks in one place, that khidmat. And we can even ask them questions of how many chores you help your parents with, etc., and even give them prizes for doing good. And obviously, tarbiyah only works if the parents are in communication with us and are helping us. If they don't help us, we'll be pouring water into sand, where we will see very little growth of plants. I'm going to just skip to this session. Here is a template. There are two templates. One is a 1 hour session. One is a 1.5 hour session. For this template, I'm just going to go here. Here. Okay. So as we can see, for the Qa'ida Nadhira, we should, if we have a 2 hour template, we should give 1 hour for that. And then from 20 minutes every day, 1 day for memorization of surah, 1 day memorization of dua. But when they're memorizing surah, we have to do it through mashq. Unfortunately, I'm running out of time. Otherwise, I will have shown that that Qari. Let me just Qari Nazmul Hasan mashq. Okay. For example, I'm just opening this page. Sorry, I'm just going to share this in the tab, just to show how the mashq is done. So we would like the students to memorize the Quran in this pattern. Okay, in this pattern, how I have showed in the video. So they will not just memorize the surahs we are teaching them, they will memorize the surah with tartil, with beautiful recitation, while applying all the rules of tajweed. So their overall standard of tajweed will improve because of this mashq. And dua obviously is with the meaning and discussion on how to apply and where to apply. And obviously the last day of the week is revision. Islamic studies is for half an hour in the method we discussed. The last day is for revision and practicals. The last 10 minutes is for ta'lim, and the last day is for snacks. Okay, so that's there. Now let's keep going forward. The time is very short, so I'm just going to go very quickly. Okay, so this is one thing. This is actually an important thing. You know what? I'm skipping all this. I'm going to go straight to the file. If you go into our resource, we have what we call Mufti Sahib, if we can share this with everyone. So if you open this tab has the teacher training tab, and it also has the resources tab, what I just shared on the group, the mezbah.org. If you go and click on this drive under resources, it will bring you to this page. In this page, we have a template for a calendar. We have a template for the class timetable. We have a template for the curriculum. This is for the Islamic studies curriculum. This is for the Quran curriculum. This is for the dua curriculum. This is a page which we use to mark the daily progress. We write how much Quran they covered for that day, what was their delivery standard, ABCD, which surah dua they're memorizing for that day. And the other flip side of the page, we discuss which Islamic studies topic they studied for that day. And the last day is obviously practicals, uniform, behavior, Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, and Isha. And then not only that, I think Brother Talha already covered this. This sheet we use for the Quran grading. So we identify the mistakes they make in A'udhu Billah, Bismillah, letters recognition, harakat, the sukun, shadda, special letters, which letters they're making a mistake in. Any a, e, u they're reciting as a e, u, or any a, e, u they're reciting as a e, u, fluency, mistakes in waqf and tajweed, etc. So all this can be found in these curriculums, etc., can be found under the curriculum tab, all these resources. And this book is a Fadail Amal, which, as I said, is very beneficial for the last 10 minutes of ta'lim. If we look at this page, it even outlines how to do the ta'lim. Here, Monday, stories of Sahaba, Tuesday, virtues of Salah, Wednesday, virtues of Quran, Dhikr, and Durud Sharif. So that's there. Now, this is the curriculum file. If we go back, we have the posters, template, editable. These are some forms and registration forms built in. We can just change the logo. This is once a week. If we have a team, we can have what we call a weekly meeting for half an hour, where we go through all these agendas. There are 26 points here we can go through. I don't have the time to go into details. Then we have the standards of Maktab, and this is the workshop I was actually showing you. You can just download it from here. It's editable. So, and you can present to your community, inshallah. These are for the parents. So we have the newsletter for the parents, some guidelines on how to conduct the PTC. And then we have the policies, report cards. In report cards, we have a few things. We have the report card template. We have some guidelines on how to write a report card. So both of these are mentioned here. And we even have a teacher's contract and some rules and regulations we make the parents sign every year. So Mufti Sahib, inshallah, you can take over. I don't think I have time to go do more than that today.
So as you see, he's pointed to some of the resources that you can use as well. And it's something that you should check out. We would email it to you as well. So at least you'll have that with you. And you can go through, I mean, there are a lot of files and a lot of documents now, alhamdulillah, and, you know, being provided and being, you know, built and structured as well in such a way that there's so much help. And as Mufti Saab rightly said as well, this is our responsibility. And if we want to see a continuation of the deen and the preservation of Islam as well, we need to work on our youth and our young people. And when we do that, subhanAllah, you will see the impact of it in all communities and inshallah in the whole sphere of life, inshallah. So very comprehensive, yes, comment there. Mufti Saab, yes, he packed a lot of information and want to try and give you a bit of insight, inshallah. And I was thinking, can we take, if anybody has any quick burning questions that they want to pop in now, you can feel free to do so. We do have Brother Yazid back online, and he's going to do his presentation. So I was wondering if anybody had any questions that they want to ask, they can feel free to do so now. You could unmute yourself, I believe, and also you can put it inside the question and answer section. Part of the session that we wanted to do is have it a bit interactive, so we can try to you know, decide and talk and, you know, figure out what are some of the challenges that you all face. What are you seeing to be hurdles? What can we do, especially as a community, if we're looking at Trinidad and Tobago specifically, or any other part of the world? You know, what can we actually do to help improve the systems that we have? So do you have these sessions recorded? Yes, it will be on our Facebook, sorry, not Facebook page, our YouTube channel. So Al-Ihsaan Institute, if you just search for it, inshallah, you should be able to find it, Al-Ihsaan Institute. So it will be broken up in YouTube on the Maktab training. What we will do eventually, we'll break up each section separately. So there'll be, you know, each section you can actually go to if you want to get a further listen of the presentation, inshallah. We will also give the presentations that has been, that was used, inshallah. So Mufti Baidullah wants to show one more thing before he finishes completely. So Mufti Saab, you can feel free to do so. Your co-host anyway.
Okay. So the one thing I want to show is in regards to the curriculum. For example, the curriculum, I don't have the, okay, let me see if I have the pictures of the curriculum itself. Yeah, I have the pictures. So if we look at the curriculum, I have like a digital version of the access to it. If we go to all the course books, basically there are, in terms of course books, they have from 1 to 8, right? And as I said, the book 6 are separate for the boys and the girls. And they have what we call the Surah and Dua book. So I'm just going to quickly show this Dua book. This Dua book has 3 sections, okay? So we have what we call, I'm just going to show it from here. They have one section which is all the surahs. They have one section with all the du'as, and they have one section with all the names of Allah. So if we start from page 14, as we can see, the first portion of the book is all surahs. So the structure is they have the surah, the ayah, then they have an empty line where the teacher can identify the mistakes they are making in the Arabic. Then they learn the translation. Once they complete one page of any surah, the teacher will put the date in every single child's book. And then there's two boxes. One is a check mark, one is a R. The check mark means the child has done well and he has passed that page. And the R means the child needs to repeat this. Since we're teaching collectively this lesson, we will keep moving forward, but we also know, and the parents also know, that the child has some weaknesses here and they have to repeat. So if we go to, for example, 214, I believe. Okay, no, let's go to 114. 124 actually. So if you go to 124, it goes to all the kalimas and the du'as. Same way, you have the kalimas, then you have the empty line for the mistakes, the meaning, and the date, and the two boxes. Then we go to the names of Allah. Here are all the names of Allah. Okay, so that is the dua book in brief. When we look at the Islamic studies curriculum very briefly, as I said, first of all, mashallah, this book was written by a comprehensive pool of 25 scholars. And we can see there is a foreword by most of the senior scholars of UK, including we have Shaykh al-Hadith, Maulana Salim Durat Saab, and many, many others, mashallah. So if we go straight into let's go to page 23, for example. This has the curriculum outline, what they will learn in each subject in all 8 years. This is a brief glimpse at the subjects, fiqh, hadith. This is grade 1, right? Sirah, Tariq, Aqaid, Akhlaq, and Adab. So if we go page by page, the fiqh will show us what they will learn comprehensively in the first grade fiqh, the 5 pillars of Islam, applying tahara and understanding its importance, and identifying the practice of wudu. As we can see, they're going to Salah, Zakah, Hajj, Saum, Hajj, tahara, method of wudu, etc. Then they move on to the hadith. As we can see, they're memorizing the hadith and understanding how to apply it into their lives. So like this, we have the next subject which is the seerah. So we have the childhood of Rasulullah, his marriage to Khadija radiallahu anha, his youth, his marriage to Khadija radiallahu anha, and some important names of Rasulullah, parents, tribe, etc. In seerah, we have Adam alayhi salam and Hawa alayhi salam, the lesson Nuh alayhi salam and the lessons learned from that. Then they have the next subject is Aqaid, articles of faith, understanding the qualities of Allah and recalling two sifat of Allah. So we have the articles of faith, we have the Allah's sifat, Ar-Razaq and Ar-Rahman. Then we have akhlaq. As you can see, 5 akhlaq in this year. So it's very interesting. I'm just giving one example. They're teaching respect. So they're teaching how to respect an elderly person. This is how you show respect. This is how disrespect. Then they have how to respect a teacher. You stop talking or you carry on talking and laughing. Then they will show how to respect, and if they see someone adult doing a mistake, how do they correct themselves, right? And then we have cleanliness, our body around us, the bathroom when eating, using the water, gentleness in speech, for example. I'm just running through the books. So inshallah, Mufti Abdullah can tell you where to get the books from. Smiling. Then we have these are what we call akhlaq, and now we have adab, the sunnah etiquettes of eating, drinking, sleeping, using the bathroom, waking up. So as we can see very briefly, this is just a course book, and every book comes with a workbook as well. Now, this was one area I wanted to show in terms of the actual pictures of the curriculum. And the next one that I wanted to show was this here, is the grading. 1 second. Oh, we did that also. Okay. So here, did you, Mufti Sahib, did you go over building the question paper? How to build the exam? So for example, the Nasiha, they have an exam portal. For example, say fiqh, grade 1, there are 42 questions. Ready-made questions we can ask from fiqh. So we can use 5 minutes and build a question paper from the website on fiqh or zakat or anything else. And then if we say 3 questions, 7 marks, 8 minutes, we can export it, and then we can print out as exams and just give it to the students. This will include the answer sheet for the teacher, and this will include the cover sheet, for example. So these are just 2 things I wanted to show, inshallah. Jazakallah khair.
We do have those as well in Al-Ihsaan Institute, and we do sell them as well. We don't have an extensive stockpile of it, but we can access it for you all if you want it as well. There's also online as well now, so they have gone virtual, and you can get it for a subscription fee. So that's something that's possible as well, inshallah. Any questions? Move on, because we do have another session here with the child psychology with our brother Yazid. And I want to move on to that as well. So if any quick questions, feel free to ask now. Okay, so that being said, I'll move on, inshallah, to the next session, Brother Yazid. Okay, let me just make you co-host. Okay, you should be able to, inshallah. So again, we want to thank Mufti Ubaidullah for his valuable contribution, and inshallah we will continue with connecting with him. He gave you the website, and we will share that as well on email, so you can get a lot of these resources available for yourselves, inshallah. Moving on to Brother Yazid, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. Right, so you all can message me. You all hear me, Mufti Sahab?
Yeah, we're hearing and we're seeing as well.
Okay, mashallah. Okay, so before we had the issue with the internet connectivity problem. So inshallah, we paused at understanding the stages. We were in the stages of the development of a child, of a human being, basically to generalize it, a student. So in understanding the development of a child, we need to know what are the the development pillars we are speaking about. And the first pillar of development we must understand is physical development. And we may ask, what is physical development? Generally, physical development looks into the growth of the individual and the development of the organ systems until a child reaches adulthood. Various measurements such as weight, height, and head circumferences are noted to check if an individual is growing within normal range. And we may ask ourselves the question: how does this is connected to a Maktab student or a Maktab in general? But basically, what we need to understand is that physical development actually impacts or affects learning. And if a child, for example, is being malnourished or do not have nourishment and all these things, we could be teaching excessively and doing all the resources and etc. But if that element or that pillar of the health aspects of our child are not being met, then it will have a direct effect on learning. So as Maktab teachers, there are certain things that we pay attention to both internally and externally. For example, we may have control of our students for a particular period of time within our teaching time, which is allotted to us, or timetable to us. But also we must be mindful of the fact that what is the factors that affects or influence a child outside of the learning environment. Because what happens outside of the learning environment in the homes, as the previous presenter was talking about the environment and all these things, it also affects how the child learns. So all these things that we have to pay attention to, and like in the previous presenter was talking about the holistic approach, holistic development. So being a Maktab teacher, we have to pay attention to the factors of the holistic development aspects of a child, what affects a child in the classrooms and what affects a child or a student outside of the classroom. Both aspects has a direct effect on learning. The other point is the cognitive development. It deals with the development of the mental capacities such as the motor skills, language, and problem solving. Emotional development refers to the way a person responds emotionally to different situations. And this is also important because as Maktab teachers, we tend to, well, what I have experienced is we see a tone of autocratic style of teaching in the classroom. What we have to realize is that the dimensions of learning have shifted over the years, especially with the aspect of COVID-19 last year. It has pushed the dimension of learning into different spheres or different forums. And now, well, besides online teaching and all these things, there are many other things which affect the traditional way how people teach. So one of the important things is that having that connectivity to our students, understanding the nature of our students, the background of our students, where they live, where they come from, their parents' backgrounds, all these relevant data will help us as teachers to make our teaching strategy effective so it can have a direct impact on the learner. Because if we are teaching in a manner which is autocratic and we incorporate push factors in our teaching strategy, what will happen is that we will start to have retention issues in the classroom, where students will not see and parents will not see the Maktab is having a positive effect on the children's lives. And this is one of the main objective of parents sending the children to Maktabs, is to see that change in the child life. And change meaning change in behavior, change in attitude, change in learning, change in discipline, and all these things. So a lot of parents depends on the maktab to help with that theological aspect of the child, and and that emotional development of the child, which they expect. There's a certain expectation from the stakeholders, from the parents, that these things, that this maktab may bring added value and benefit to the child's life. So if we as maktab teachers do not understand these developmental pillars of our child, then what we will be doing, we'll be doing the same thing for years, and we will not be yielding the results or the desired results that we expect, or the stakeholders like parents, etc., expect. That sometimes we hear parents use the remarks that it doesn't make sense sending the child to maktab, it doesn't do XYZ. Why I've sent my child to a maktab for 5 years now and they haven't finished qaida, and all we hear these kind of comments. So taking those comments into consideration, what we have to look and see is actually what is going on within the teaching system, and to understand to make proper teaching plans, to make proper lesson planning, activity planning, and all these things. We must understand the psychological composition of the child. Right? When we talk about social development, is concerned with the way an individual develops relationships and interacts with people around him. And this is the evidence of this is understand how children play with one another. So as a maktab teacher, as a teacher in general, we must need to these are things that we pay attention to besides the normal teaching. We pay attention to the students' behavior, how they interact with one another, because what happens is that from all these clues, we can propose additional help to correct these issues or behavioral patterns of the students. So if we have a system, and we have a maktab system running in a masjid, and we have trained psychologists and all these things, and we identify that there are issues that is affecting how the child or the students learn normally, and these issues cannot be corrected by the teacher, or it needs additional help from external expertise, then we could have a system where we could refer these cases to other professional people who they can provide the ideal diagnostics and give recommended solutions of how these things can be overcome and corrected. So there are many elements which are associated with teaching and learning that indirectly affects teaching and learning. Meaning that if you look at the social composition, I talk about social development, emotional development, and all these things, right? It is hidden by a child, but is things that if a teacher does focus on teaching and learning alone and does not focus on all these other pillars, then the issue is that we would not achieve the results that we want or we desire for one. So what will happen? It will actually have a breakdown effect in the maktab system, because we will have students moving, as the Mufti was explaining in his previous presentation as well. And we can see we can see from the previous presentation is that how the curriculum was designed. It was designed like a scaffold, a scaffold, like building blocks where it is built upon layers. So we were seeing clearly how they move the students from different grades and different years. And also we were seeing that the content were increasing and connecting from the different grades in the different age groups as he identified. So if we tie in our teaching and our teaching learning strategy to that, like for example, that curriculum, yes, we will be moving the child, the curriculum is there. But if we do not identify the other pillars of learning, which indirectly or directly affects learning, then we will not be able to move the child properly. So our students will be moving from grade 1 to grade 2 without understanding grade 1 work. So this is why they have all the current assessment sheets and all these things, is to ensure and to verify that the students meet the necessary standards and are competent to move from one level to the other level. But all that movement takes place with what happens within the walls of the classroom. And what happens within the walls of the classroom depends on how well the teacher manages the class. And how well the teacher manages the class will be based on how well the teacher pays attention and identify issues which are indirectly or directly related to students' learning. So students' learning is as good as how a teacher teaches. So the development of an individual begins in the womb of the mother. The parental stage in this time when senses and primitive reflexes are developed. Injury at this time of the development, which can be caused by teratogenic drugs or infection, can cause serious birth defects. Well, this is a general information. Also, what is uncovered is that when the child is in the womb of the mother and the child exposed to Amas and Quran and all these things, child born with a different temperament. So if we move on in the essence of time, so this is then followed by toddlerhood, when gross motor skills and language are learned. The imagination and experimentation are common. The phase of early childhood follows where children begin to socialize more often, intelligence become prominent, and the last phase in childhood is adolescence, where children begin to form their own personal identities, morality, and learn to reason. So if we separate these three phases, right, and understanding in terms of before adolescence, right, understanding those stages and understanding how the child learn through socialization, learn through play and all these things. In our teaching strategy, by understanding those developmental stages, the manner in how we will teach adolescent children will be different from how we teach the toddlers, not toddlers, but like preschoolers and all these things. And one of the common things is that also as Maktab teachers, we need to pay attention to. If a child is doing, for example, is in say infant year 1 in primary school and he's learning phonics in English language, and he has come into the Maktab on a weekly basis or daily basis, as the case may do, how do we teach? What is the strategy that we will use to teach Arabic phonics where a child is doing English phonics during the day? So these are things that we need to sort of close the gap with, or develop bridges to integrate the two. So at the end of the day, the child will not be confused as to what he or she is doing. It will make sense to them. So the teaching strategy must be in alignment to the age of the child. So it must be age appropriate. Secondly, the resources that we are using, and we'll see, mashallah, from the last presenter, how effective and colorful. And you all, I don't know if you all could share with me, why do you all think that those resources are so pictorial and colorful and all these things? Anybody want to share that in the... Anybody want to share why? Anybody want to answer why in the chat? Why the resources? You're welcome, Sam.
Because it draws attention to the children.
Right, it holds it, so it works on the attention span of the children, because as I say, a picture paints 1,000 words. So if a child in primary school sees my slide, they will say, what craziness is a standard 1 or second year? I am teaching them using slides like these, which is more text-based. They will say, what craziness is this man teaching me? Why he crazy or something? Because for them to internalize this, it will be challenging them, because why? It is not age appropriate. So resources, and many of us who are teachers, we understand that resources is the aid in teaching. So the fact is that having the resources which is age appropriate, and also having resources which now makes more sense, which is interactive, is also very important, as the sister was saying, in terms of the attention span, right? Can we quickly grab attention? Exactly. So dealing with attention, exactly. And we realize now that, I don't know if you all probably noticed this too, over the last couple of years with the adverse emergence of technology and all these social media, this and all these kind of things, we see that and we speak to a lot of teachers who are in the primary school system. One of the major complaints is that students cannot sit down for long and sit down and pay attention facing a whiteboard or a blackboard. They become detached from it. The concentration span is shortened. And what is directly affecting these things is the exposure to all these games and online gaming and videos and all these things, which is mentally pulling the child in another direction. So as Maktab teachers, how would we pull back or strike a balance between that? So we cannot go to the extreme of doing what the children do, but what we can do is actually use the technology for the benefit of, in a dini manner, that the children could relate to, right? Because one of the big drawbacks now, like we experience as teachers, is that children don't read. Children don't read much anymore. Children barely read. And the thing about it is that if we take a strong approach of having a choke and talk kind of system, it will not have exactly an impact on the child. What will happen is that we will be wasting time, wasting resources. And so if we do not make our teaching learning strategy that is compatible, the age we are in technology, the age we are with apps and social software development and all these things which is available compared to the last 10 years, is that what happens is that we will not have students who could relate to what we are doing in the classroom. So all this part of the development of a child is important, understanding how the curriculum and scaffold are layered, right? And how do we make that curriculum to implement that into our classroom, is to make our resources as well too, our teaching strategy incremental as well too, and also and the root of that is understanding the social composition of a child. So what it means really, understanding the social composition of a child, it simply means education 101. Know who your learners are. As good teachers, one of the first thing we do is identify who our learners are. And once we are able to satisfy all the roots, all the pillars of knowing the dimension of our learners, who our learners are, then this is where we could take that data and plan around it. Because the curriculum is standard. Many things are standard. But if we do not customize on how we are going to execute that curriculum, then what we will be doing, we'll be going through a process of what we call long time in teaching, choke and talk, you know. But now we understand that things have changed. Children thinking has changed. What children was exposed to 15, 20 years ago is more different now than what children now is exposed to. Now you will hear 3-year-old and 4-year-old talking about TikTok and all these things. Things weren't existing when we were small. So all these things we have to bear in mind is that as time and technology change, and also the method of how children think also change, and the method of learning, there's also some elements. The wave is kind of bending how students are learning as well too. So it makes sense in terms of how we integrate to as well too in the academic. Like for example, in Trinidad, if a child goes to school from 8:30, as I was saying previously, from 8:30 to 3 o'clock, and they goes to the Maktab in the evening. If we do not understand, for example, the teaching strategy from 8 to 3, and we want to introduce something which is totally different in the evening, how could we make it compatible that the child is exposed to a similarity in terms of the teaching strategy or a reflective approach? Because we do not want, at the end of the day, that children comes to the maktab and they leave more confused than when they came in. This is very important. So we cannot take the position that children is just come into a maktab, you sit down, pull out a book and you learn. Those days are extinct. So what we have to be interactive. We have to adopt a student-centered learning approach, meaning that we put the decisions we make is based around the learners and not ourselves as teachers. So cognitive stages for a child development is what are children capable of learning at various stages in development. What are children capable of learning? This is why we have a curriculum. And the curriculum is scaffolded or laid out incrementally as we go along. As we said, is that children need to, the teaching strategy has to be age appropriate, and also the resources that we use has to be age appropriate. So it makes sense to you. Does it make sense in understanding before we start to teach and talk about all these things in terms of understanding who our learners are, identifying who our learners are, and answering all the basic questions in terms of associated with our learners in terms of understanding their background, their abilities, if they have any learning disabilities, medical issues, and all these things. So it will help us to better plan in our delivery and know what type of resources to use or what resources that will make sense to the students. Sometimes teachers design resources to make sense to us as teachers, but at the end of the day, the objective of the lesson is not for us. It is about the child or the students. So how do children develop their intellectual skills to react and interact with the environment? As I said, this is important, and this is where the teaching strategy in the Maktab has to be on point, because we want our students not to live as hermits, but we want them to live in an environment, like in a secular society like ours in Trinidad. We live in an environment which is not an Islamic environment, but how do we interact with without being carried away by the environment? And how do these cognitive abilities and how do these cognitive abilities develop and in what order? Right? So here are 4 cognitive stages of childhood development. So the sensomotor stage, birth through about 2 years. During this stage, children learn about the world through their senses and manipulation of objects. You all agree with that? Right? Pre-operational stage is ages 2 to 7. And during this stage, children develop memory and imagination. Right? They are able to understand things symbolically and to understand the ideas of the past and future. So example, by knowing these things, it will help us to plan better, because if we have students who in Maktab from 2 years to 7 years, we will know exactly if students, as the slide said, right? During this stage, children are able to use logic and to solve problems. No, sorry. Right. Pre-operational stage, right? During this stage, children develop memory and imagination. So knowing these things, we'll be able to plan our lesson, to have a mental approach and allow children to be imaginative. So our teaching strategy and our resources will reflect that. The next stage is concrete operational stage, age 7 to 11. During this stage, children become more aware of external events as well as feelings other than their own. They become less egocentric. So it's not about me again, myself, and begins to understand that not everyone shares their thoughts, beliefs, and feelings. I think time going. Next stage is formal operational stage, and this is at ages 11 and older. During this stage, children are able to use logic and solve problems, view the world around them, and plan for the future. Making sense, people? Any questions? You could ask questions in between, no problem. So what we know from the information processing model. So information processing model further expands our understanding of the development of cognition in children. So develop in the 2 decades, in the last 2 decades, following like Piaget theory. I know those of you study education be familiar with that. This model explains how and when a child core cognitive skills are developed. Right? So cognitive skills include, so we talk about what is cognitive skills. It include attention, short-term memory, long-term memory, logic, reasoning, auditory processing. You already know about the VARK model, how children learn using the VARK model, VARK, right? The type of learners we have, right? Or visual processing and processing speed. So we understand that children learn through, some children learn through hearing, seeing, kinesthetic learners, auditory learners, some children like to read. So these are the things that teachers have to pay attention to. How do our students learn? What is the best platform that they learn on? So we can understand that and know well how to plan and how to deliver, execute our lesson according to the strength of the learning ability of the students. These are the skills the brain used to think, learn, read, remember, pay attention, and solve problems. The information model takes a closer look at the specific cognitive skills at work behind the scene. So according to this model, attention, short-term memory, and long-term memory are developed between ages 2 and 5. Auditory processing which is critical for good reading skills, is developing between the ages 5 and 7. Logic and reason also becomes more established when he is after 5 years of age, as the student becomes better able to make connection between ideas. So understanding this, knowing what are the strengths here, according which is age appropriate, we'll know exactly how to plan our lessons. So if students are auditory processors between 2 to 5, will we try to bring in too much reason and ideas and theories and in between 2 to 5? It will be relevant because it would not be age appropriate. It would not make sense to our learners. So knowing these things will make sense in what to do and when to do it. You understand, people? What to do and when to do it in terms of curriculum, delivery, and so forth. And so that is basically, in a nutshell, it's on 4 o'clock already. I don't know how much time I have, Mufti Sab. How much more time I have?
What we can do is if you can just do a wrap up, inshallah, so we can take any questions and discuss all the things.
Yeah, so let's go straight to the. Yeah, so basically, I just want to touch on classroom management. So what is classroom management? Simply, because we'll ask the question, how do we tie in classroom management with teaching? So simply put it, classroom management refers to the wide variety of skills and techniques that teachers use to ensure that their classroom runs smoothly without disruptive behavior from students. And so it boils down to having a structural formal learning environment with clear rules that promote learning, as well as consequences that diminish or eliminate behaviors that get in the way of learning. So in all the things we talk about psychology and all these things, but also what marries with that is having proper classroom management. So if our teaching strategy is weak, or our resources are off and all these things, then what happens? We will create an environment of discontent among our students, and that will start to impact, it will affect the physical behavior of students. And when students start to behave disruptively, what happens? It put pressure on the management of our class. So our class so the consequences are, it starts to disrupt the classroom. So what happens here? Work are being pushed back. We cannot get work done. Students can't settle down. The teacher become frustrated. And one problem, so it creates a domino effect. So it all ties into the whole root of this is that it goes back way back to the first point I was saying, in terms of if we as teachers do not deal with the issues and implement the corrective actions from day one, meaning knowing who our learners are, identifying who our learners are, knowing the background history of our diagnosing our learner, etc., then if we do not have this data or information to work with and take these things into consideration when we planning, then we will be planning away from the bullseye of our target. And then what will start to happen is that we will start to have small issues, and then after a while the issues will start to which will become compounded, and then it will reach a point where it cannot be dealt with, or as we say in Trinidad, the horse don't leave the stable. And what happens is that it will negatively affect the entire operation of a Maktab system. So this is why understanding the psychology of a child, the anatomy of a child, is so important. So let's go and skip into the second to last slide here. So it talks about classroom management and the attributes of classroom management. So creates classroom with rules, and we know these things. Maintain the classroom rules, routines, and schedule. And why routine? Routine brings discipline, right? But maintain a flexible room for fun. When students are engaged and excited, right? And this sister brought up that point. When students are engaged and excited about learning, we have less management problem arises. Yeah. 3 key rules: use your voice, wait on your turn, raise your hand, always have a backup plan, get the students involved, which is called interactive learning, have them take part in designing and smooth running of the classroom, create an atmosphere of respect in which children feel safe, valuable, and want to take risk, right? And all these things, or some of these points you might see, it encourages what? Things like critical thinking outside the box. It's also how we manage our classroom, how we articulate in our classroom. That is also part of the student, of our teaching strategy as well too. By aware of the school resources, right? Do not ignore any negative behavior we spoke about. Create a daily routine, right? So all these points you can see could directly and indirectly has an effect on learning. So 7 classroom management techniques that really work, right? 1, build relationships. 2, make positive phone calls at home, and I think the Mufti was talking about it in terms of getting students involved, having scheduling and all these things so we know when to plan. And the whole thing besides making positive phone call home is communication with with parents. So communicate and give them updates on the child performance and all these things. So the Maktab is running like a system, not like a daycare center. So sometimes parents are the temperament. So I'm working from 8 to 5, and after school I have no way to send my children. So they send them to Maktab. Why? Because the Maktab is viewed, in my opinion, sometimes as a daycare center. So there's no sort of value or sense behind it. So maintain authority all year long. Make sure that the student knows what the rules mean. Accommodate all learners, because the word was hinted to us before is holistic, and be prepared. So yeah, inshallah, this is my little contribution. Time doesn't permit us to go into more further details, but inshallah, show Mufti Abrar maybe planning a part 2 workshop where we can drill along more into assessment methodologies and more classroom management techniques and so forth. So inshallah, if you all have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them, inshallah. Yeah, Mufti Sab.
Yeah, so if we can, first in order is Jazakallah for them and their time that they spent behind it. But the conversation continues, and that's something that we need to be mindful of. We need to continue trying to build the system. So let's start with first, let's have a little interaction if we can for a few minutes before we close off. Is there anything that anybody wants to highlight, or anything that they found that was interesting and they wanted to know more of? Okay, good.
A very insightful presentation on the methodology of setting up the Maktab. We have a lot of Maktabs going, but not properly structured. And I was very interested and intrigued by the methodology and the scheduling and the curriculum and that sort of thing. Thanks very much for organizing this session. Very beneficial. Thank you. Jazakallah.
Jazakallah for that contribution. That one of the things that we wanted to do is bring out the importance to ourselves, because yes, what you said was right. In Trinidad, we do have a good amount of maktabs happening, but we feel that there's much more, and there needs to be a bit of again the conversation going to show some of the importance and bring about that structure with the organization part, meaning the masjid or the whatever it is that's running the maktab, the importance in the community, the parents, the children, all the parts that comes together to have it, become successful. The curriculums, the methodology. So if we talk about it a little bit more, people will start, you know what, I need to actually look at this maktab system in a more structural way. It needs to be something that actually takes you from one level to the other level. We should be able to track it, for example. We need to know that students are actually progressing. We have a HIVS program in our masjid that bringing out Hafaz. So we all want this. We all want these outcomes, but putting it together, inshallah, is where we are still working, and we'll continue working, inshallah, on it. Question here, what are some ways we can use technology in teaching the same material syllabus to facilitate students' interest and interaction? Both Mufti Ubaidullah here too, and Brother Yazid too. If you want to jump in at any time, you can feel free to do so. But we do understand as well that the online system, the online platform is going to be different. The method of teaching as well is different. And the methodology that you have to use to attract your listeners, your learners is going to be different as well. So that would be, different prongs they have to actually work on. One is the engagement, pulling them out, engaging. One of the things that we try to do in our maktab, because we have a 3 times a week maktab from the Nur Islam Masjid. We even get sisters, Amiza is here with us as well in this training. She calls up the teacher, the parents, and finds out, right away, if a child is not there, why are the children not there? So one is the keeping registers and rules. That has to happen in a maktab system as well. It happens in the schooling system, so there should not be any reason why the maktab system should not have that as well. So that happens. We call them up, we try to figure out what's happening. We email them as well from time to time, asking them how come they're not on, or if they're having any challenges, if they're having connectivity problems and so on. But we do try to interact with the parents as much as possible, so that at least they know that somebody's checking up on their children and finding out why are they not there and so on. So those are some of the things that we do recommend. The other things is that we do have to use a bit of technology here and there. Using digital resources is really good. You even have the apps that, for example, Mufti Ubaidullah was talking about, that helps with the student in listening and memorizing. So we can use some of those things as well, inshallah. If we can get some more techniques on class management, and yes, that is a given. We need to continue that conversation to classroom management itself. And Yazid, you can jump in if you want here. It is something that the teacher needs to build that relationship with the child, and he mentioned that as well, that you need to have that sync. The parent, the teacher needs to understand who the child is, and the child needs to understand who the teacher is as well.
So what we can,
the method that they work with each other.
So what we can do, we have a lot of materials available. So what we can do is compile them, and I can give it to you, Mufti Abrar, and then you can have it distributed, inshallah.
Yeah, so one thing, we will send out these slides to everyone. We will put up the websites that was mentioned as well in the emails to everyone as well. So if you did not sign up through email, please send us a message. I did put the WhatsApp number on the chat there. Please look for it and save it as the Al-Ihsaan School, Al-Ihsaan Institute's number, sorry. And if you message there, we will add you into our mailing list and make sure that you get this information as well. So there's guidelines, there's policies, there's report cards, there's syllabus as well. We can guide you to all of these things. Some of the syllabus that we use right now, actually, we use the Safa curriculum. That's the whole curriculum that is structured as well, similarly to the one that Mufti Ubaidullah was actually showing, and the actual way that the teacher can bring about the class and activities and objectives of the class as well. So these are all things, inshallah, you can benefit from.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
My questions has to do with more the teenagers. As someone who's been through the secondary school process, well, when I was a Christian, there was a big, when it comes to RI, we always had classes. But on the Muslim level now, as a Muslim, there isn't much of a Islamic presence when it comes to RI in the secondary schools. And I would like to see more of that because I think when our children become teenagers, they tend to follow the bandwagon, especially when it comes to Maktab.
That's very true, and a very good point as well. And that's why one of the things that we encourage in our, at least the Maktab system, is that it doesn't stop at standard 5 or at 12 years and so on. It goes straight up to 18 years old or so, right? Because it's systems that you actually teach. They go into more depth when you get a bit older and more understanding, and we should continue that. Even further, that being said, teenagers, they have a whole range of different types of challenges that they face. You know, things like pornography, friends, peer pressure, drugs, you know, alcohol, the type of movies, and movies are being bombarded with so much, you know, so much illicit and immoral actions now that, you know, to allow your youth and children to actually have free reign to movies and shows and so on is actually destroying your own child. So if you really want to protect them, you have to actually keep them away from it in a certain way. Moving even further into what you said about the RI, we actually used to do RI. I mean, us and there was a few brothers and sisters used to help out with RI. And we used to do about 6 schools in the northern area there, northwest, where we are in San Juan there. But what happened after a while is some of the schools wouldn't continue. Some of them didn't have a good system. Some of them did continue, but it was very short, once a week for 30 minutes again and again. It's not enough engagement. So it's something that we really have to work on. And I feel that we should actually have special sessions just for teenagers, talking about their issues and highlighting the adolescent challenges that they would have, inshallah. So that can be another project that we look at in the very close future, inshallah. Anyone else have any contribution that they want to? We can do some, yes, coaching on that as well, specifically to engagement with youth. For teenagers, yes. Actually, that's one of the things that we were discussing on the board of Al-Ihsaan as well, that we should have a special teenage coaching facility as well, that people can bring in their children and say, you know, they want someone to coach them and bring them up, you know, talk about some of their issues. And one of the things, obviously, with even coaching young people is that connection that you build with them. So, you know, later on, years afterwards, you see the benefits of it. You know, I sometimes engage with some of the older folks, you know, even my age, older than me and so on. And they would tell me that when the reason why they connected and they stayed in Deen and they had a connection with the masjid, it was because of, like, the imam would always call them and say, where are you? How come you're not here? And, you know, why don't you come? So they always felt that connection, and also that a bit of guilt, and also that feeling of belonging, that, you know, so-and-so person always calling me to the masjid, or always telling me, come here, and why don't I join this class or that class? I always felt that I had, you know, I was indebted to that person, that I needed to do these things at certain times. And that's one thing that keeps our connection, that really, you know, we cherish it later on. We cherish the few people who looked out for us and would say something to us, a nice word, or encourage us to something, even though it might not be a whole bunch of effort, but because of that little connection and that concern that they had, subhanAllah, it goes a long way. So, mashallah, jazakallah for that as well. So feel free to unmute yourself if you want to make any contributions while we come close to end, inshallah. I think we should get Muslim parents to put pressure on schools to continue with the IR classes. Yes, definitely we should get Muslim parents to show that it is very important for their Muslim students. One of the things, though, we do have a challenge with is the Maktab system and Islamic education system does have a difference in the methodology, and the traditional schooling system has a different methodology as well. And sometimes they don't always meet in the same place. And what we try to do is bridge it a bit, but sometimes we do have to maintain 2 separate parallel systems working together. And that should be, you know, a discussion as well that we have. How do we actually, should we bridge it? Should we keep it separate and parallel? Or should we just make both of them complement each other in some way, in some form? And
on this topic, is that?
Yeah, on this topic, first of all, if there is an Islamic school or a Muslim school, then they should try to allocate 2 40-minute periods, one 40-minute period for the Quran lessons, and one 40-minute period for the Islamic studies, the tarbiyah, and the practical ibadah. That is one point. The second point is, even if the Islamic schools or the Muslim schools are catering to giving that 2 subjects or 2 time slots for the 2 subjects of Islamic studies, even then the Maktab system is extremely important for 2 reasons. Number one is, if we look at the Arab world, for example, Egypt and even Saudi and the other Arab worlds, maybe 75, 80 years ago, before the breakup of the Ottoman Empire and the creation of the kingdoms, the system was the children would go to the masjid right after Fajr, and after Fajr, whoever was walking down the streets, especially the old people, they say, we would hear the Quran ringing from every single masjid. Then gradually they merged the program of the Maktab with the schooling system, and the Maktab program became part of school. So right now, in order to pass any grade, a child would have to pass the Quran lessons and the Islamic studies lessons. So the result of this was, we saw a lack in knowledge. Everyone became knowledgeable in aspects of Sharia, but in terms of practice, the practice went down. So when doing research into the subject, it was found that when any topic becomes only for the sake of grades, and a child will have to perform a certain grade in this Quran and Islamic studies to pass on the grade, then the aspect of bringing that into practice does not remain. Rather, it becomes another subject like math, English, and science. Just like math, English, and science, no one studies with the intention of bringing into practice. They just study it for the sake of simply passing the exams. So something similar happens to the Islamic studies when it's only merged with the school and there is nothing extra. The Maktab program is designed such that it is solely for bringing that change into the child, as the child knows and the parents know that from the Maktab program itself, I'm not getting any certificate or such that will allow me to get a better job or anything, but it is just to improve his deen and the life, so both parents know. So what I'm trying to say is the school should definitely do this, but at the same time, we should never compromise the Maktab program and allow it to stay in its place. Because one is the Muslim school students and one is the public school students. Both of them have an opportunity to come here and refresh their Islamic knowledge, inshallah.
That's a very good contribution. That's one of the things I was thinking about recently as well, and you can feel free to voice your opinion as well, right? As Muslims, right, when we want to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we want to feel that sense of spiritual and religious strength, and we want to connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in some way and some form, we do things that would take us out of an environment into a new environment. So for example, when a person wants to, he realizes, what, I've not been very punctual and so on in my Salah, and I feel like my spiritual life is going down, my Iman is getting weaker. We go to the masjid and we go there with this intention that, oh Allah, we're going towards you and we want to connect to you. You pray your Salah, you try to spend more time in your Salah, for example, you pray your sunnahs, and you know that you're leaving your family, you're leaving your household, you're leaving your children, and you want to just go there and focus, especially for the men. And similarly for women as well, when they want those moments, they will go in their little room and a little area and they will pray, they'll put on their hijab and their clothing, and you would see the dedication and the connection that they have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So similarly, what we do, because mentally, us as humans, we look for those opportunities to go into another environment, because with the change of environment, we're able to focus in a different way. So similarly with children as well, when they know that this maktab, and the parents, they're obviously key to this, understands that this system that is very important, we need to go in it. When they go into that system, they know there's a different type of behavior that is required, and a different type of etiquette that is expected, and that the lessons and the time and the energy that you use spending that energy there is going to be rewarded. It's a whole different mindset. And that's why one of the things is that whilst our world is becoming so secular and so modernized, we need sometimes these institutions to become sane again, or to become connected again, and to rely on whatever knowledge that we can get from it. So the point I'm making is that you will always have a traditional system continuing, and we will always need that traditional system. And we will always have within the schooling systems and the more structured daily kind of practices where there's lessons and extracurriculums. So those systems will continue as well. But to always try to marry that into one system, you will have a benefit, but sometimes you do need to have them separated. So there's a little bit of benefit and harm as well, and putting it together as well has its benefit as well. Like we do it at Al-Ihsaan, we have a primary school as well, and we do try to incorporate tarbiyah and Quran learning and all of the different things. But when it comes to Maktab as well, that shouldn't be disregarded, because you have a system. Each one of them has benefits, and we have to continue looking out for those benefits, inshallah. So I hope that was some insight as well to keep our minds going, inshallah, and trying to improve and better our understanding of these systems, inshallah. So do we have anybody else, any other contributions as we come close to the end, inshallah? Or any comment or anything anyone didn't agree with? So is there anything that anyone did not agree with and they wanted, they felt differently about it?
Assalamu alaikum. Unfortunately, our education system allows just 30 minutes for RI within the curriculum, and teachers are demanded, they are required to deliver on the curriculum. So we have to see how best we could use that 30 minutes to the benefit of, propagating the deen, inshallah.
Honestly, with regard to that, my approach used to be try to connect to the identity of the student being a Muslim in those sessions. When we would go to schools as well. We try to connect to their identity, so they know that they're Muslim and what does that require after that, and you try to hook them into coming into other systems, like come into the Maktab system, come and join the youth group, come and join the teenage group again. So these are some of the ways I felt would have been effective, that you use the little time that you have, but try to put them onto the other pathway that they can go on, continue to preserve the deen. I think to this, teachers should build a relationship with parents and stakeholders, definitely. And we know that that is the prophetic method as well, that we build our relationships. Relationships are very sacred. People undermine relationships now, and now people feel that they're by themselves and they're independent, that they don't need anyone else. And that should never be the attitude that we have as Muslims, because our relationships and the connections that we have, they would actually be something that really beneficial for us in the future, or something that we should at least be very the older folks, they would know, and they would tell you that that's something that you cherish, your relationship, your connection, the people that would support you, the people who would help you, people would give you a good word. Those are people that you want to keep close by, and you maintain those relationships, inshallah. So even with that, with kids and so on, try to always encourage little kids. The Prophet ﷺ used to do that, orphans and so on. He would pass his hands on their heads just to show that affection as well. He would talk to them, he would make jokes with them, he would encourage them as well, he would call them to his sittings and so on. So that would be part and parcel of the practice of the Prophet Muhammad and the Sunnah. And that's a whole different topic, inshallah. We weren't able to cover that, the prophetic methodology in teaching as well. So there's some really key beautiful elements in the life of the Prophet Muhammad as well, and it's something that we should consider learning more about as well. Sheikh Abu Fattah Abdul Fattah Abu Ghadda, he authors a really nice book on that, the teaching methodology of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So there's something that we could look forward to as well, inshallah, and look out for it. So I do want to end the session now. We're coming close up to the half an hour there, 4:30. So if we don't have any more contributions, we can have our final.
One more point in regards to the students, because the age group wise the curriculum differs. There are some common times of the year where all the students need to be educated about. For example, before Ramadan enters, before the Eid comes, the Hajj season, during like Valentine, Christmas, the Halloween, and other times when plays and activities are done with the objective of promoting that thing in the culture, we have to give the Islamic perspective to the students. So for example, in the Nasiha website, they have resources on Muharram, on Eid, on bullying, and many other things. And many ulama have made other resources on gaming and etc. So those are things we will have to keep in mind. And as I said, that if we have a weekly meeting, even if it's a very short half an hour, 20 minutes meeting, these points can be discussed. That is there any special occasion? Do we need to discuss anything important? And then we can close the class for one day and focus on that topic, so that they're equipped to deal with whatever happens in school. That's one point. The second point is sometimes a child has a lingering question in his mind due to whatever he heard from someone or he saw somewhere, but they don't feel comfortable asking it in front of everyone due to peer pressure or what will the teacher think, etc. So we should have some type of a drop box, especially for the little bit older children, and tell them that if you have any or anything that is bothering you, you don't have to write your name, write down the question and drop it in this box. And every week we should check that box and see what type of questions are coming. And based on that, within the Islamic timetable, we should find a way of answering that in a way that it does not harm or offend anyone. But at the same time, the curiousness of the child is paced so that it does not become something more major later on in its life.
Jazakumullah, that was a really valuable thing as well. We do need to open up portals and opportunities for students and young people to address some of the issues that they're facing. So that's something that we really have to do, and again, the method of doing it as well. They don't have to come forward themselves, but open up that portal where they can drop it anonymously, and they know that they can go to this portal or this room, or if it be online as well, to get the answers to what they asked. So they know that I can drop it there. Nobody would know who it is, but at least I'll get my answers that I'm looking for. So that's very good as well. Jazakumullah for that, Mufsal. So I just placed some of the websites as well online on the chat box there. You can check it out. But again, I'll compile all of these websites that we talked about, and I will send it to everyone, inshallah, on email. Again, if you did not sign up with us and you did not join our mailing list for this Maktab session, please do so, inshallah, by sending us a message by saving this number 610-0089. This is our Al-Ihsaan Institute WhatsApp number, or you can even email us to the actual email address, Institute Al-Ihsaan@gmail.com, inshallah. Jazakumullah again for your attending. Your attending itself makes these programs successful, and alhamdulillah for that opportunity to be able to interact with you in some form. We did have some of the other participants that came in for the first session, but I didn't see them for the second session. But again, some people get engaged differently, inshallah. We will make these recordings available online, so you can still refer to it and give other people, inshallah, the opportunity to listen to these workshops, inshallah. Again, you'll find out on the Al-Ihsaan YouTube channel, so feel free to do so, inshallah, and do share it. Again, we do have some resources about an Al-Ihsaan Institute, many of the ones that were spoken about today, and you can feel free to visit us, inshallah, and we can go through that in detail, and you can look at it and see where there are benefits, inshallah. So Jazakumullah for coming, attending, and I thank all of the guest speakers, Mufti Ubaidullah for his time and effort. He spent the whole entire session with us, and our brother Yazid as well for his time and effort as well. And again, brother Ubaidullah, Mufti Ubaidullah is available as well, brother Yazid, so you can contact us on this office number as well, and I can put you on to them as well. They will help you with so many resources as well if you need, inshallah. We're continuing this process to try and build the awareness and the need for Maktab, inshallah, and the need for continuation of our Islamic curriculum, building Islam and Deen in the country, inshallah. So Jazakallah, and until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.